Hello, Professor Toybox here along with Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey, and we're back in my Fantasia toy box for our next episode of Toy Box Tutorials. I'm standing in the original toy box in front of the toy box door that leads to the interior of the Magician's Castle, which we've been working on for the past 9 months. And today we're going to finish the interior of the Magician's Castle. But before we do, I want to take a moment and tell you what's coming up. Because after today, we only have one small toy box left to build, and then we'll finally be finished with my Fantasia adventure. Now next Friday will be the 18th of December, which means the following Friday is Christmas. I will not be uploading an episode of Toy Box Tutorials on Christmas or on New Year's Day, which means next Friday's episode of Toy Box Tutorials will be the last one for this year. So I've decided I want to try to finish my Fantasia adventure before the holidays. For today's lesson, we're going to revisit the toy box door, and I'm going to show you another way to use it. This is how the player is going to access the third and final toy box in this adventure. And then next Wednesday, I'm going to do a special episode to show you how to build that third toy box. And then on Friday next week, I'll give you a tutorial on the boss battle spawner, and we'll build Mickey's final battle with the mysterious villain who's tried to take over the Magician's Castle, and then my Fantasia toy box will be done. So that's my plan. Now, we created this toy box door back in episode 30, and at the end of that episode, I showed you how you can make a logic connection from other toys to trigger the toy box door to change the level. Well, today I'm going to show you an example of why you might want to do that. So let's head on into the interior and get started. Okay, here we are in the interior of the Magician's Castle, and I'm in the main house. If you recall, we created a simple collection quest here back in episode 57, and we sent Mickey on a scavenger hunt to find the ingredients for a spell that would counter the mysterious enemy who's trying to take over the Magician's Castle. Collecting all of the mushrooms and bringing them to this cauldron up here completes the quest and breaks the enemy's spell. When this happens, I want to have a portal open up by that window behind the cauldron, and stepping through the portal will take us to the final battle with this mysterious enemy, whoever he is. The player must finish the collection quest before they can travel to the final toy box. So, if I've got my toy box door, I could place this door right here by the window. But the problem is there's no way to prevent the user from going through the door whenever they want. So what I'm going to do is use a trigger area for this door. And so I'm actually going to place the door back here behind the wall in a place where the player can't reach it. And we'll place the door there. And we're going to come up to the terrain drawer. Reset that on me. But I'm going to drop down a little piece of terrain because I don't want to have to run through this whole collection quest in order to get to that door. So this will just be a temporary piece of terrain, and when I'm all done, I'll take that terrain out. But that'll let me get through this door when I need to, just to build the toy box. So we have the door. Let's go ahead and set the properties for it. And the destination, again, by default, is the original toy box that I created in this save file, which is Fantasia. And I want to go to a new toy box. So we're going to create a third toy box. So I'm going to do new toy box. And we're going to create an empty toy box. And for the level name, I selected that and it brought up the keypad on my Wii U panel. And I'm getting over to the correct letters. And I'm typing in the name, which will be Mysterious Dimension. And I'm going to hit save. And now that's creating that third toy box inside my Fantasia save file, and it's linked it to this door. So that's perfect. The rest of those properties are fine. Now to access that door, we're going to come back to the Creativitoys drawer, and I'm going to put down a trigger area. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller because I want the player to have to be over here. And we'll put it right there. Okay. And so if we come in here to the trigger area and open the logic menu and do a new logic connection, when entered by player any, we'll come back over here to the toy box door and change the level. And so stepping into that trigger area will then trigger the door. Now, I don't want this trigger area to be used, or to be able to be used, until the collection quest is done. So I need to deactivate this trigger area until then. Because right now, without that, we come out here, I can actually run up to this trigger area and it invokes the door. And I don't want to do that. I want the player to have to finish the quest first. And so to enforce that, we're going to come out over here to the level starter. And I'm going to do a new logic connection on catalyze. And we'll come over to that trigger area and deactivate it. So that way when they come into the level the very first time, that trigger area will not be active. And we can test that by pushing the button that invokes the level starter. And of course that's going to kick off all the enemy generation and everything. So I need to come back over to this button to remove the enemies and reset that. There we go. Okay, so now we can come back over here and we should see that that trigger area doesn't do anything. So if I walk up to the window, nothing happens. So that's good. All right. Now, the quest is finished when they find all the mushrooms and they bring them back to our little guy. And he's disappeared, so let me just put him back down with the button that I had set up for that earlier. So there's our mission giver. So when we collect the mushrooms and we come back to the cauldron, there's a locator, if you recall, under the cauldron, and this dynamic trigger is hooked up to that. So when they approach the cauldron, this dynamic trigger triggers the end of the quest. And you can see it's connected to the sound generator over there to play the end of the mission sound. It's connected to the action enforcer. And so this is the toy that I want to use to open that portal. And so on this dynamic trigger, we'll do a new logic connection. When entered by player any, we're going to come over to our new trigger area and activate it. And that means the player will then be able to walk through that area, walk through that toy box door into the third and final toy box. Now right now, the player isn't going to see that trigger area when they're playing. There's nothing there to indicate to the player that the trigger area even exists. And so we need to provide a visual cue for them. And to do that, I'm going to use a visual effect. So I'm going to drop down a locator. Put that right there on the edge of the trigger area. And then we're going to need an effects generator. And I'm going to put down a button too, just to make sure I've got this set up the way I want. And we'll delete that button when we're done. But we'll need the effects generator. And we'll hook this effects generator up to that locator. So we'll do a new locator connection on the effects generator and connect to that locator. And then just to test this out, on the button, we'll do a new logic connection. When pressed, we come over here and we're going to play looped. And it's under, let's see, I believe, under flashes, magic vortex. That's what we want. And then, by the way, we're going to need another button to turn that off. So a new logic connection, when pressed, will stop looping the effects. Okay, so let's test this out and just make sure that portal is going to be displaying in the right direction. Okay, so for right now, that's what the portal looks like. But when we look at it from over here, we're kind of looking at it on edge. And so we actually need to rotate this locator. There we go. And so that now looks like we have a magic portal that's there. So I really like that. All right, so now we'll go ahead and turn that effect off. And we can delete these two buttons now that I got the locator in the correct place, because the toy that really is going to trigger this off again is this dynamic trigger. That will activate that trigger area. That will also activate the effects generator. So we'll do a new logic connection on the dynamic trigger when entered by player any. We'll come over to the effects generator and we're going to play looped under the flashes category all the way to the bottom, the magic vortex. And we should probably hook up our reset button to turn that off. So a new logic connection when pressed. Come out over here to that effects generator and we'll turn off that effect. So now completing the collection quest will activate the trigger area and turn on the visual effect. So I'm going to go ahead and save my game, and then I'll fast forward and test it out. Okay, so I've saved my game, and now I'm going to go ahead and test it out. So we walk up to the mission giver, and he says collect the coins. And on the radar you can see that it's generated 5 mushrooms, or 4 maybe. And of course I haven't run through the whole level to play it, so that door is closed right now. But we can come out here and see what we got. There should be some mushrooms lurking out around here somewhere. It looks like they're all over on the other side of the toy box. Alrighty, no problem. Okay, so there's none over there. Here's one here. So we'll go ahead and pick that up. And it looks like there's one out over that way. And I'm just kind of going into spark mode and zipping around here just so I can pick these up quickly. All right, there's 2. And there's two more lurking around. Somewhere. There's one out here at the start. And then the last one should be over in this direction. Somewhere. There it is. Okay, so then we pick up the last one. And now the radar marker has gone back to the house. So now we return to our mission giver. And you can see the radar markers pointing at the cauldron. So now when we walk up to the cauldron, Mickey celebrates and the portal is open. So now we can travel through the portal to the new toy box, but I'll go ahead and cancel out of that for right now. So there we go. We've hooked up a toy box door to a magic portal that will open when we finish our quest. So that's a case where you would not necessarily want to use the toy box door directly. And so I think that's a useful thing to see. Now we have a couple more things that I want to do. So while we've got the locator selected, I want to place a couple of enemies out here. And I want them to be facing over across the way. So we're going to turn it like that. And I'll put another one over here. And we're going to need an enemy wave generator because I want to set up a couple of Dunbrock catapult bears. So that when we are over there on the other side, these guys will be shooting at us. And that'll make a little bit of an extra challenge. So on our enemy wave generator, we'll do a new locator connection. I'm going to connect up to both of these locators. Like that. And then we'll configure the wave. And I'm going to scroll down and look for the catapult bears. So right there. And I'm going to need 2 of them. And under the properties, we'll take the generation delay to 0. And now we're going to spawn these. Let's see, we don't really need them until the player gets into this area. So we can do it off of this trigger area. So I'll do a new logic connection when entered by player Annie. We'll generate the wave. Okay. And that will give a little bit of extra fun gameplay over here. Because in addition to battling these guys, those guys are going to be lobbing stuff at you. And when you're trying to avoid the spikes and get across the bridge, they'll be lobbing stuff at you. But you could come over when you start the quest and run out here and destroy them before you head over this way. So there's a way to get around that. Now the last thing I want to do, I had set this up previously so that this cauldron would start spawning the marsh muck when the player pressed this button up here. And I noticed by the time I got back down that ramp, they had already entered this area, and I don't really want to battle them here. And so I'm going to come back to this button, down to this link, and I'm going to delete that link. And if I open the logic menu again, now you'll see that's not there. And what I want to do instead is put a trigger area inside this archway. And we'll use that to kick off those enemies. I'm going to put this right up here next to this door. So they have to come, when they come through that archway, that will trigger the cauldron. So we'll do a new logic connection there. When entered by player Annie, come over to the cauldron and activate it. And on the cauldron, a new logic connection. When the first unit is generated, we'll turn around and deactivate this trigger area. So that way it won't keep happening. And that also means we need to come to our reset button and do a new logic connection when pressed. We'll need to turn that trigger area back on. Okay, and there we go. So at this point, you would move all of the creativitoys out of sight. So some of these, like the ones up on this wall, can probably stay. The player's not going to see those. But others, like these down here, and the ones in front of these color pressure plates, you might move those below the terrain. And you would probably want to move these out away from the wall as well, and then put the ceiling on here. And I'll pick this piece up and put it down. And basically, to put the ceiling down, you're going to put a row of these across here and build them across this way and just cover this whole area with these blocks. And that'll put the ceiling on this room. But I'll leave that as an exercise to you. So at this point, the interior of the Magician's Castle is done. Next Wednesday, we'll go through this door and build the arena on the other side. And next Friday, we'll build the final boss battle. Oops. I forgot to deactivate that dynamic trigger. I'll show you how to do that next time. Anyway, next year, we'll start working on a brand new toy box as we continue to look at some of the other toys we haven't covered yet. Meanwhile, thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, or at least found it helpful. We're almost finished with Fantasia, so if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, be sure to do that so you don't miss the final 2 episodes. That's all I have for today. Have a great weekend.